But I'll ask you what I think is a very straightforward question, and maybe the answer is a little difficult. How hard was it as the offensive play caller, essentially, to go from having all the offensive weapons you had outside of Travis Kelce and transforming into what we saw by the end of the December, January, February football with some young players like Rashee Rice, for example?
Yeah, well, Rashee was a big part of that in his growth, being able to play opposite Kels and kind of doing the same things Kels could do, playing in space. That became an important factor not only for Rashee, but for Patrick and for Kelce and Kelsey's production. And then MVS got better. We eliminated some of the drops. We had a bunch of drops and penalties early, eliminated some of those things. I thought Matt Nagy did a phenomenal job. He puts everything together. And then, we talked during the game on the different plays. So, but he and his staff, Joe Blameyer, the rest of the guys, Andy Heck with the offensive line, the list goes on. But those guys did a phenomenal job, I thought, sticking together, making sure the players stuck together, and then our defense with Spags allowing the offense to grow by playing great defense. Really benefited us, especially down the stretch there.
Andy, when you start hearing your players already start talking about three-peat, as the coach of the football team, how do you take that? Do you relish that?
Yeah, I'm okay. Listen, I'm okay with all that. They're words, and my thing with our guys is they all know it's going to come back to St. Joe and when camp starts, and so they know they can't get too far away from it. You got to cut off some of the fluff, and you better get ready because that environment up there where it's hot and humid and everything, that's a tough place for training camp, and you better come back in shape and ready to go. And so they all know that, especially the nucleus of the guys. They've passed. They make sure that word gets passed, and the guys kind of back off after a little bit here.
When you get to the Super Bowl, it's hard for you guys to get even time off to recharge, but you have a lot of very important decisions to make this offseason, and Brett has done a phenomenal job, especially drafting on the defensive side of the ball. But you got two critical pieces on the defensive side of Chris Jones and LJarius Sneed. So how do you make that decision on franchise or who you're going to keep, or you try to keep both? What are those meetings like?
Yeah, so you know how this goes. You want to keep all the good guys.
Yeah.
And we're lucky to have some really good guys. Virtually impossible to keep them all. We're lucky that we only have two that are just major guys, and those two. We'll give it our best shot. We're not gonna. We want the guys to be there, and I think it's important that. Everybody knows that. I mean, that's when we come into it, we're going to come after you. And if it fits the bill, then let's go and let's move on and go win a couple games here. So, but with the restrictions, you got to be smart with it too.
Yeah, and how long do you wait until you say, hey, we're going to franchise one of these two guys, and how difficult is that when you have to make a decision between one of the two?
Yeah, well, hopefully you're able to keep both. I mean, that's how we come into it. Let's try to find a way to potentially do that. And if it works, whether they're franchised or not, whether it works, then or we get a deal done. If it works, great. If it doesn't, well, then life goes on. I mean, that's how this thing works. And then we're lucky to have Brett in charge of it, and he gets that part, and he also gets a part of, and his guys do, of going and finding good players. And this thing is one of the last team sports left, and so it takes all of us kind of pulling the rope in the same direction if you're going to win the tug of war. And every week's a pretty competitive tug of war.
Andy, one day when in the office we were figuring it out, if you coach 5 more years and win 12 to 13 games, you have a chance to break Don Shula's record. Do you ever look at that and think about your legacy and if you can do it that long?
Yeah, I don't go there. I'm probably right with the players. I come back to training camp. I try not to get too far away from what's real, and I don't know. That's great. I mean, whatever happens, I don't. That's not where I spend my time. I'm too worried about the other stuff, and maybe down the road I'll think about that when I'm done coaching. I will tell you, though, Don Shula was one heck of a football coach. And Belichick is one heck of a football coach. And so those guys, I was able to compete against both of them, and I keep them on a very high pedestal.
You talked about Steve Spagnuolo and the job he did with the defense, and he could arguably end up being one of the best defensive coordinators ever. We talked a little about LJarius, Sneed, Chris Jones, and Trent McDuffie, who had a fantastic year too. Did knowing Spags and that defense was capable of what they were able to do make you even more aggressive than you might have been in recent years? Because it felt like the score didn't necessarily matter. You knew you could get a stop, and if you got stopped on a fourth down early in the game, you knew there was an opportunity to come back and make that up in the back end, it felt like.
Yeah, well, half of managing the games, having that, you've got to know that stuff. So I'm aware of it, although you want to score every time you have the ball. But I'm also aware of the other side. And I thought last year we had kind of turned a corner once we got into the playoffs defensively. Some of those young kids that were on the back end grew up, and some of the young guys that had to step in for starters, but we'd had for a year, Bolden, Willie Gay, these guys also had grown at the end of last year. And so coming into this year, I had a pretty good idea that defensively we were going to be pretty good. And that as the offense grew, the defense was going to have to carry the offense for a while. And that's exactly kind of what happened. And Spags deserves the credit for that, and his coaches. They did a great job last year of teaching, which is so important in this thing. And never, the offense did a nice job last year of not pointing fingers at anybody, and then that just flipped this year. And the defense didn't point fingers at the offense, and it worked out okay that way, yeah.
Yeah, going into next year, like you said, it's is it time to start talking dynasty with this football team?
Yeah, I'm not good with that either. I mean, I'm coming back to St. Joe. So, you know this. I mean, every year you want to go win it. I mean, that's what you're striving for. But all 32 of us are doing that. That's what makes it so great, especially with the parity in the league, the way it is. So, I mean, people can talk about it and all that. I mean, I think it's more the media that claims you a dynasty than anybody. But go win, and then whatever they want to call you, they call you. But take care of the winning part first, and that's what you've got to do. And there's steps that you got to do to win. I mean, you know how hard it is to win in this league. Win one game is hard enough, and then win a championship's ridiculous. So you got to get back to those. Get back to training camp. Get back to St. Joe.
One last thing, Andy. When you coaches always look back on their wins and their Super Bowl wins when you rank them. The way you won last year, does that one make it a little more special? I mean, I know they're all special, but you had to go out on the road and win in the postseason. You weren't great on offense for a lot of the season. Does it make it that much more special the way you did win that one?
Yeah, that was different for us, and that's something that I think will strengthen our guys. That kind of nucleus of guys that have been through a couple of these things. To know that you can do that, especially in tough places. I mean, Buffalo is a tough place, and so is Baltimore. They're very well coached teams. So to be able to work through that, maneuver through it as the underdog, I thought showed a little toughness with our team and their trust in each other, which I think will go down as this team. Their belief in each other. Yeah.
Andy, thank you very much for taking some time out. And just one last very important question. Who do you like better, Rick or Pete?
They're both like dinosaurs. We're all in the dinosaur club. So we've all been doing it a long time.
Only one of us is retired, though.
And you can tell by the tan.
Andy Reid, Kansas City Chiefs head coach, most recently a Super Bowl champion yet again. Thanks for joining us here on HQ.
Nice interview with Andy Reid, the back-to-back champ. Oh, and now they can say again, we're the underdogs going into next season. You know, they love that. 49ers are the favorites right now to win next year's Super Bowl at 5-1. Chiefs behind them at plus 650. We got the Jaguars in the drop note just for Pete. They are 35-1 to win.